Before we start, also I would give floor to Brother Omar Ibrahim, head of Saahot Makaado.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ممكن أنا قاعد نهتم ني مكابونك ني بعدتي تكونكو سنعيو سن مشوار سنعيو حبتيني ندعوة يعني نفس كبريني تمتيني ماكم سن السحم بدي وسن عود تشنا وإن شاء الله لي معي قصو معي محاضرة تقرين تالي إن شاء الله يعني نلقى نتراس يعني تماتن لقى يعني أكايت وريني يعني نكاه وجوجل أكاي شيء أما هي تجربة وما هي شرحك إنه حولين وموضوع المحاضرة له ما يبسطني يعني في النهاية إن شاء الله يعني نهضة سكر شيء محاضرة أي أسئلة أو أي استفسار إن شاء الله يعني مفتوح ياكو كدني وباسمكم جميعا أرحب بالدكتور جامع موسى جامع وإن شاء الله لي معي قصوى معي سوا معي جلسة أتمنى لكم وجزاكم الله ألف خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا برادر عمر قابلنا الشو كادو دكتور موسى ميتو كني كادونا لينو محاضرة غوندو وشيرو شياكو تالي أسوكلا كانوا ليابيكا إنجليزي اكتبهم بلسنها عراقيو مكسرة دكتور موسى أرحبوا كني. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Again, everyone, thank you for coming. Before I speak about Jama, let me introduce myself. My name is Ahmed Saad, and I am very happy for this moment. It was my dream, really, once. I don't have words to explain how happy I am. But in my inside, I had a conviction one day our language, Saho, will be equal with another languages. It will have its own right, if I can say that. So I would like to express my happiness, how happy I am to meet Dr. Jama and to have such experts in the area that we need most. So just let me give also a brief introduction to his work and what this project all about. So first of all, allow me to thank Dr. Jama for accepting our invitation and for taking time out of his busy schedule to come to our community to share his expertise and enlighten us about a project that was launched recently. A project, even to think about it, was once a dream. It is a project of Saho language corpus. Dr. Jama is here today to explain us about this wonderful project that was formed jointly by Dr. Jama Musa Jama, Moreno Vergari from Etnorema, Professor Giorgio Banti from University of Naples, and Ahmed Saad, myself. The aim of this project is to create the Saho language corpus and create tools that enable the Saho language to be on Google Translate and other internet platforms for text and or audio to text transcriptions and translations and vice versa. Dr. Jama is an expert in this area and has already created the Somali corpus, which is, we can say, equivalent to British National Corpus, if you know that. So today, he will take us through the topic, developing a common natural language toolkit for Somali and Saho, as you see here, and explain us the importance of this project and the work that has been already done, the next phase of the project, and what can or should be the role of the community or public in advancing this project. So let me give you also a short biography of our distinguished guest today. Dr. Jama Musa Jama is an ethnomathematician with a PhD in African studies, specializing in computational linguistics of African languages. His current research focuses on the role of heritage, art, the culture in development and state formation, including settlements and cities expansion in Somaliland. Founder and yearly organizer of the influential Hargeisa International Book Fair, and currently director of the Hargeisa Cultural Center in Somaliland. Dr. Jama also has a research association position in DPU, University of College London, the UK here. So he is also a fellow of RVI. So I would like to take this opportunity also to thank everyone involved in this project, especially Moreno Vergari from Etnorema, Professor Giorgio Banti from the University of Naples, and Professor Gianni Dore, also he is one of our colleagues, is the co-author of our forthcoming book, and from the Ca' Foscari, the University of Venice, for the various works they have been doing on the Saho language. So, finally, after Dr. Jama finishes his presentation, we'll open the floor for for question and answer. We will only allow questions or comments relevant to the topic, just to save time. So we will have also some snacks and refreshments. Now I give the floor to Dr. Jama.
MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm really happy to be here with you because of, as Ahmed Saahot said, this was a long dream for many languages that unfortunately today have no space in the new world. I do apologize that I can't speak in the language that I am working on it. I get to know Saho language recently. I'm from Somaliland, so I'm a Somali mother tongue speaker. So my language, my mother tongue is Somali. I studied, of course, Arabic is the second language of being Muslim and being educated as a young person in Quran. Second language of my country is Arabic. I studied almost all my educational background and my life and worked in Italian, because I was based at the University of Naples and University of Pisa. And the language I'm speaking, which is the English, is my fourth language when it comes. So I do apologize if my English is not that good, because of that comes the fourth language that I'm working or I'm living. As a brothers and sisters, so close to each other, so connected, we should have speak in our languages. We should have speaking in Somali or in Saho instead of speaking in Italian or English as I'm doing. And that was the spirit of working together for their own, every people their own language. And as you heard from the good presentation that Saad has done, I work on ethnomathematics. What does mean ethnomathematics? So why I'm working on a language that I don't know, I can't speak, which is the Saho language. Ethnomathematics is basically how every community can use its own mathematics. Because of, unfortunately, what happened when the Western, colonizers came to Africa, and even before that, whenever a new foreign come to a country, to a land, the first thing that they do is to inject their own culture, their own language, their way of using. And we lost what we have, the beauty of our culture, of our communities, what we use it, and at the end of the day, the old woman who is in the nowhere's land in Somaliland knows how to count her 25 sheep. But she doesn't go to university to learn how to count, which means every community has a way to produce knowledge, to preserve that knowledge, to pass to one generation to another to their own identity and culture, including the science and the knowledge produced. Somalis, and I'm sure this is valid for the entire East Africa and entire African countries, had their own way to understand the weather forecasting, for example, to decide the day when they have to let male camel to mate with the camels in a way that next year when they are giving birth, it's a rainy season. That's a knowledge that unfortunately we lost today. We knew how to use stars to get the direction where we are going when we are nomads. Today we don't have that knowledge. Mathematics, the basic mathematics is born in Africa, in Mesopotamia, but today it's claimed that it's the Western mathematics. Why all this happening? Because of someone came to us, they wiped out our culture, our history, our language, and we have a problem to speak among us in our language. But also, soon we will have a problem to speak to our children or grandchildren in the language that we were used to. So that is where I'm coming from when I say each community has its own culture, its own science, its own language, its own religion, its own way of doing and behaving, and we need to protect that. Because of no one is making discount to us, because of if someone comes to you and help your country, they will be bringing also their own way of life. So you have to find a way to defend that. So that's where I'm coming from when I was working the ethnomathematics. And I do an example before I pass to the corpus. I'm sure many of you have done university or secondary education. And the classical example that we use when we are learning the probability, for example, is the game of dice. Everyone in our school is, in order to teach probability, or they will use the game of dice, or the game of cards, the cards. But imagine in a society a young Eritrean kid or Somaliland kid who never heard about the game of dice, or who don't want to use the cards because of the mother who would help thinks that using the cards is a bad thing in our culture because of it linked to gambling and so on. How they can help these two people each other in order to learn. So my question was why we didn't get our own games, traditional games, African games, Somali games, Eritrean games, where our kids can learn the same mathematics, but instead of using the game of dice or the game of cards, use our own games in a way that they feel that the mathematics and the culture and is something that's inherited from their. If we use that kid would say one day, oh, my grandmother used to know mathematics because she taught me the mathematics. But instead, a disconnection comes from the kid and their parents. So it looks like that the knowledge came from the West and it's not our knowledge. So that's the point where I want to invest more time and energy for our own language. I did my PhD in computational linguistics, and I realized that the language that has been developed, the English, German, French, others less, but all European languages had enough technology in their own language. Today, everyone is using a computer, and a computer doesn't mean this one. Everyone is using a computer because this became a computer today that you use, whether it's a maps, whether it's a Siri, or whether you will speak. And the fourth generation, industrial generation, we will use to talk to computers. So if our language has no any elements, any tools within the technology, it will be cut off completely, because of that's where the technology is going, and no one is doing for us if not ourselves doing for our languages. Yeah. So today you have a word, you buy a computer, you write a text, and that text, if it's written in English, you have a spelling checker who is correcting the spelling errors. You have a grammar checker who is correcting for you. You have a synonym list that gives you the knowledge of the language. You have the translation from that language to another language through Google Translator or many other elements. If we don't do our language that and build the instruments that we need, that would never come because of no one else will do it for us. So that's where I'm coming from when I was building the Somali corpus. Luckily, how it worked, it was a very successful project because of I built the database, I built the system, but the community helped it. I did open that people can access to it, and because of there is less resources in that language in internet, that language still remain behind when it comes to the science and knowledge production and knowledge distribution, if you want. So we needed someone who puts this data. If you look at a number of documents that are available in language, like English, and you compare the entire African languages, all of them written together, and you look at the internet, it's not even 1% with the elements available in English language, and also other languages are the same, more or less the same. So we need to build the instruments that we need in order to make our language in line with the new technology. That it serves us, but most importantly, it passes the identity and the culture from one generation to another. It's the medium that we want to use. Otherwise, we will not have an identity. So that's why it's important. So I did for the Somali language, and I will show you some in the Somali language. But today we are here for the Saho language. I just checked how many documents available, or how many websites in Saho language, or how people are using the social media and using the social media, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, or any other platform that they are using, how many people are using the Saho language. And it's really, really, really small in number. So we will be having a problem if we don't get this language and promote this language to be used in our conversations, because of the technology will cut out very soon. So for the Somali language, we collected really quite good number of, and the Somali became, now we are almost 7 million words collected, which makes the Somali language the biggest database in all African languages. Today, even Swahili, the University of Helsinki in Finland is supporting, but there is a small number of words collected. The Ethiopian language, there is a project with I think 6 Ethiopian languages, including bit of the Somali, 6 languages, Ethiopian languages. Saho is not part of it. And last year there is a project. I think it concluded with the German universities, but still it is small, the number of words that has been collected. And those languages had luckily they are going now to the Google Translate, but in order to be Google Translate accurate, it needs to have good collection of data inside. So the more Saho language written material in internet, corpus tagged is available, the more these translators will be more accurate with other languages. So still, even when we develop, inshallah, when we finalize the platform, you will be still needed as a community to feed and put the correct way of speaking of your language in the system. When you are using social media and Facebook or sending an email in your language, indirectly you are supporting the platform to learn more your language, because of the words will be collected, the content will not be collected, so your privacy will not be violated. If you write on Facebook a comment, that comment will not be reconstructed. So a sentence will not make sense, but the words will make sense. So the more words in Saho language in internet, the more systems like Google will be more accurate and more accurate. So even when we build, and today we'll be doing the first step, inshallah, we will need your support that you use the system, you use as a translation, you use it as a spelling checker, because of sometimes if you use Word has no Saho language as a spelling checker. It doesn't have it for the Somali. Now Google took the Somali corpus and many other platforms took Somali corpus, but still we don't have the spelling checker. In order to have the grammar checker, we need to study the language. So there is still work going on in terms of studying the language itself before we develop the computer can help us. For the Saho corpus, I collected towards 100,000 words, which is really big, starting big number when you compare, for example, the entire other Ethiopian and Eritrean languages in those area. Even with the Kiswahili, there are a small number of words collected. So for the information that we had and for the books that we have collected, and I'm grateful to Moreno Vergara, to Giorgio Banti, Vergari, to Giorgio Banti, to Saho, of course, and anyone who we use their book is published, including the books for the schools that for the elementary schools that we have collected. All those data is collected, restructured, made in a way that's possible to do a research, to do a search. So you select a word, you search, and then you will get how that word is used. What we are working on, and I hope we'll be spending some time with Ahmed Saad, of course, and with anyone who can be helpful, starting from this afternoon, how the language itself develops. I don't know the language. I'm basing my knowledge on the minimum information that I got from the scholars who were working on this language, including the dictionaries, because we need a good dictionary in order to build the language. Exactly. So all those elements will put together an effort from the community of language, speaking that language, from the scholars working at the universities, from the school teachers, and most importantly, from the local governments. Local government, I mean, this institution is a local government because it's serving its own community, but also in Asmara or in elsewhere where we have people who speak in Saho. The community itself becoming a local authority. So in order, we will need all those forces together. So why we are building a corpus in general, and in particular why we are doing for the Saho language, we will see how this is a more technical, so I don't want to waste much time about the technical and IT, how it's developed. But if there are students or if there are scholars in ICT interested to work or be part of the project, I would be happy to talk in a separate session so they can contribute from the platform side. I will see how the corpus, what we are expecting, the elements that we are expecting to have from this corpus, and then I will mention how this corpus, and when I defined what does mean corpus, how we can manage and interact with it. Then some of the IT application is needed in every language, but specifically for our own language. And at the end of the day, we are more oral society, all in African countries, and most importantly in East Africa, we close to orality than written culture. So how we can build instruments that use that power of orality, like the Somali oral poetry, to build and have and compete with the other languages who have the culture of written culture in 4 centuries. Then some works, I will show you some works that still we have to do. And then the research, I was mentioning, if there is anyone who is interested, or if you know anyone who is willing to work academically in a research, just put me in contact and we will have. So what's the aim of building a corpus? A corpus is nothing but a collection of words of a specific language. I underline the words instead of the sentences, because if we are interested to collect more words of that language in a way that tomorrow, if there is a computer who is translating, who listening you and writing a text, or reading a text and making a voice, can understand what that word means, how it's pronounced, and most importantly, how it's linked with the other words. So a corpus is an electronic database where you have a huge number of words, and then you build how these words are connected to each other. And this project is looking for building not only for the language, but for the Saho literature written in Saho language. So on one side we are looking at the top as words of the language, but we want to understand if these words, how they are used in a poetry versus or how it's used in a text written as a fiction novel, or how it's used academically in science. So the three areas could be different. The same word that has a different meaning according what you are using for. We will be focusing traditional and the written. Traditional, I mean oral. I know that we have a good number of data recorded in cassettes, and so more than recorded than written and as voice. So we don't want to lose that. We will capture also the conversations that we are having in Saho language, the recordings that happened in the past, the radio programs, the TV programs, YouTube sessions, all those voices speaking in Saho language in the future will be captured. Because we need more words to collect. This dictionary is not containing all the Saho language words. No. It might be even 10%. Usually the statistics say really less than even 10% what we put. But even in this case, if you see and open a dictionary, any dictionary, you will see the word and the explanation. That's the definition. You will find many words in the definition that's not listed in the dictionary. Yeah. So we will need more words to collect. We can't trust only the listed dictionaries here. So for that reason, we are going to collect also the spoken word in Saho language. We will be divided mainly in two major sections, and the first section will be poetic literature. So we'll be going whatever, we will be a little bit expanding the word poetic, because we will be adding also what's not prose, everything. It could be revitalise, it could be proverbs, it could be songs. All those poetic verses will be put in one basket, and the other basket will be prose, which could be, the text written in essay, a political speech, an article on a journal, academic article in Saho language, science, and so on and so on. All those areas will be put on the browser. So we have two blocks of mainly two baskets. Because of I'm interested to understand how the words, jump to another basket and perhaps change even the meaning that we understand. So the first decision we have to take is, in order to collect more data and diversified data, was to split the corpus. So the basket will be big, even if we divide it into two. So how we can collect? We can collect if we make smaller size subcorpora. So the first subcorpora, of course, poetry, including songs, but also traditional songs, proverbs and riddles, traditional stories. So we just want to listen some elder person who is telling a story to a younger person. That's a way to collect the words. Of course, if there are novelists, I didn't meet many publications in fiction in Saho. So we collect whatever we get, even the short story, even in a story that you wrote in your Facebook is becoming a fiction. So we capture also that. essays, which means all publications that has more academic sense, and newspapers. I don't know if we have a regular newspaper coming in Saho.
No, there are the journalists, I think. Shabab.
I just checked, but I couldn't find.
Magazine.
Fantastic. That's good. So we need all those to capture the words from there. Of course, if there is any theater or any word, any presentation drama, it will give us a new category of words. So we need to capture as a sub structure. Of course, all scientific texts, books, mathematics, even the basics, elementary schools, mathematics will be another chapter. So that's the chapters that we need, blocks that we need. Each of us can contribute one of those. Sometimes you write one short story of 3 lines, and that will produce 10 words that the system didn't know first. And that 10 words will be used by 10 other texts. So we will identify a text published 10 years ago on Facebook where we had a sentence written in Saho language. Maybe the rest of the text is English language. So it's useful. Even if it's a short, it is useful. So the aim of this is to build what I call syntactically annotated and verified from the philological point of view. What I mean with this sentence, I mean that what I want that the system receives is the correct one. Because of today, unfortunately, what's happening, and this is every language, young people who want to write SMS or want to write Facebook or want a message, they did the incorrect spelling of everything. Yeah. They don't care anymore what they are writing, so they write, if they make shorter versions of as English, they will remove all vowels, for example. So if we put these mistakes, of course the system will create a mistake. So it should be something that's really verified that at least from the spelling side it's correct, and syntactically annotated, because if we want to understand every word where it's coming from. If this is an inflection form of a verb, we need to link the verb with the inflected form.